The transportation and logistics industry has its own set of challenges. In the hot seat, industry thought leaders take on M&A and what's driving the future of transportation and logistics. Are you ready for the hot seat?
Welcome to In the Hot Seat with the Tenney Group. I'm Spencer Tenney. It's good to be with you. My next guest and his disruptive tech saved one warehouse 3,300 man hours in one single month. We're going to find out a little bit more about how he's doing that for that company and others. With me now, very good friend and creative tech guy, Caleb Brown, CEO of Venatrust. Caleb, welcome to the hot seat.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Spencer. It's great to be with you. Thanks for the invitation. Love the podcast and honored to be on.
Well, I'm very excited about learning a little bit more about what you're doing in our network and our audience learning as well. But before we heat things up a little bit, sir, why don't you just take 30 seconds, tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you're doing through Venatrust.
Yeah, thank you. We started about 5 years ago, and we set out to look for gaps and cracks in the 3PL and transportation industry. There's a lot of really terrific technology, great transportation management companies, great ERPs, great software companies. But what we noticed is that there was some significant opportunity to innovate. So we set out to just not try to rebuild everything or boil the whole ocean, but find really significant opportunities where we could come in greenfield and say, hey, let's provide a solution to a really obvious problem. And so I'm thankful to tell you, and we've been blessed by an incredible team. We've innovated 6 or 7 things that are creating real transformation in the industry and closing some really important gaps. So excited to get into it with you. I'm blessed by a really great team of engineers, software guys, some really wonderful industry experts, and really, really excited to tell you about what we've been working on.
So let's jump right to that. I kind of teased the problem here, but tell us about the tech. What is it doing? What problem is it solving?
Yeah, so we're in the track and trace space, and we've primarily used RFID technology. And by way of reminder, RFID is radio frequency identification. So this is old technology. It's been commercialized for the last 40 or 50 years. There are some big companies that a lot of you may recognize, like Zebra, Avery Dennison, Impinj, Honeywell are all in this space. So when you get into the 3PL space, RFID has been around for a while. And the way that that's being used right now is it's really helpful, but fairly ineffective. For instance, there's a large club warehouse place where you may shop. And they instituted RFID about 10 years ago on their cross docks. And this is just in cross docks when, goods come in on the left side of the building. You got 70 minutes to get it into tractor trailers on the other side of the building, headed to the right warehouse locations. They implemented RFID about 10 years ago, and veteran forklift drivers went from being able to do 8 trucks per shift to 12 trucks per shift. So they're using about 62 million RFID tags a year, and they hit their point of equilibrium on their investment by month 7. And so it's just been straight gravy EBITDA to their bottom line for the last 9.5 years. And it's just driven massive, massive savings to consumers like me, whose wife goes and shops at, this place several times a week. So great history with RFID, great recent history with RFID. And then for those of you that may not know, in this industry, probably everybody already knows, a lot of retailers like Walmart, Belk, Nordstrom, Macy's have all come out with RFID mandates, and they're forcing all of the suppliers to send them products that are pre-labeled RFID. So what they're trying to force is complete visibility through the entire supply chain from manufacturer all the way to the point of sale system in a big box location. So how it impacts our industry is every 3PL, every tractor trailer, every cross-dock, every DDC, every MDO is going to be forced to participate in this. So how do we respond to that as an industry? Well, we saw an opportunity to say, hey, let's bring that full cost of ownership down. Let's drive better results, better data, and not only force all of us that are in the industry just extra cost because of these retailer mandates, but say, hey, how do we participate in driving cost efficiencies and even higher revenues right here for trucking companies, 3PL, warehousing, PDCs, and MDOs?
Oh, I love that. So let's walk through the kind of the case study that I teased here to kind of like put things in perspective. I mentioned 3,300 man hours repurposed in a given month for a warehousing and distribution company. So walk us through, like, where was the impact created? And then what was that company able to do with all of that, found opportunity in new labor and cost savings?
Yeah. And thanks, Spencer. This is going to sound like I'm bragging because I'm bragging. This was so cool. And for those of you that get to know me, I'm not big into bragging, but I'll brag on what our engineering team did. We walked into a scenario that was 1.2 million square feet, about 900,000 products on the floor. There's no H racks. These are things stacked on pallets. They're going up to the maximum allowable height that OSHA will allow. And these are things like refrigerators, washing machines, televisions, laptops, and cell phones. So this 3PL serviced 4 major clients. And there's actually 2 things that I'll tell you about the same location, because we solved a problem on the inventory counting, what's our first solution, but we also eliminated claims and returns on the exit gate. And so I'll get to that in this example. The first thing that I'll tell you about was how we revolutionized, was the word they used, their inventory counting. So they have to do cycle counts for their insurance and for corporate. They're responsible for products from these 4 clients. They had 5 people working per shift, 3 shifts per day, 1 manager per shift, and then a manager that oversaw those 3 managers. So there were 19 people who worked in this department, and their one job was to hand count inventory, 900,000 products a week. So they would spend all week and do 1 cycle count. And these are folks making $22 an hour. It's not a high paying job. It's not a high skilled job, but high accountability job. So if the counts are off, high turnover rate, high stress for the people, high stress for the managers. So what we innovated, and it's a patented technology. It's our mobile reader. And our mobile reader can go on a push cart, a forklift. This particular organization used a golf cart. And what they did is, because of retailer mandates, RFID tags were already going on the boxes at the manufacturer level. So these were getting RFID tags when the boxes were flat and dry. Products get packaged later on an assembly line, whether it was in Korea or Mexico, China, wherever the product was coming from. And it was arriving here with RFID tags on it. So what we did on day one is we put our mobile reader on the back seat of a golf cart, and they started to drive up and down the aisles. And driving at the maximum speed that OSHA will allow a golf cart to go, which is 16 miles an hour in a warehouse in the US, they drove up and down the 34 aisles in this warehouse. It counted, driving east to west, and missed 4 tags out of 900,000. When they drove west to east, it picked up those 4 tags. So what they realized was they could have 1 quarter time person driving a golf cart, and they could do a cycle count in 34 minutes with 99.999996% accuracy.
Wow.
When they drove the other way, they were picking up those handful, 3 or 4 tags that they would miss. So what happened was, after they did this for a month, they started to do 1 cycle count at the start of every shift with 1 person. So what they've moved to now is they offered a retraining program for everyone in that department. The manager that used to oversee all of it, he tells me he loves it. He still drinks his Mountain Dew. He grabs a big Mountain Dew thing, and he jumps on the golf cart, and he says he gets to drive 2 hours a day. He does 4 cycle counts a day now, to where the clients of this 3PL are getting real time per shift updates on the condition of their inventory. And it has impacted restocks, reordering. They're getting real time data that they used to only get once a week. So radically transformed the way that they did it. So they repurposed, of those 15 counters, 12 of them took a retraining program, got raises, and still work for that 3PL. One of them took another opportunity somewhere else, and 2 of them just quit. They were close to retiring and said, technology took me out. And the reason I tell you that is This technology doesn't replace people. This allows people to say, hey, I'm going to stop doing a low value, neck down job. And it will allow me to get retrained, grow my career, and make more money. So the way I described it, because they were worried, he goes, hey, this is 19 people. These are real lives. These are car payments and mortgages and school fees. What happens if your tech eliminates these people? And I pushed back and I said, what? We had the same conversation when we created the washing machine, 100 years ago. What are women going to do now? Well, it turns out they're going to run for president of the United States and be astronauts and doctors and attorneys. So I don't think that the technology revolution is going to have a negative impact on people if we're cognizant of the people. And I know that our companies that we all run are filled with people that we care about. So that's why I wanted to key on this one thing. It wasn't that we just saved a corporation a lot of money and it was a soulless move. Most of the people who worked there got a promotion. So it was really neat. One other thing that I'll tell you about that happened at the same 3PL is we took a different one of our technologies. It's actually over my shoulder here, and we put it in their canopy on their exit gate. And this was really cool. We stuck one 3-cent tag on the rider that goes with the bill of lading when it left. Now, this particular 3PL it's public. I'm not going to say their name because of mutual non-disclosures and legal things, but you'll probably find it. They reported $61 million in claims returns and chargebacks to this 3PL in the previous year. So we installed 4 of these units. We put a 3-cent RFID tag in the rider. When that paperwork left, because they were already using another one of our systems to validate, our portal systems to validate all the load billing to make sure that the right things were going on the right trucks. When that truck left the gate, it initiated the IOD insurance and invoicing process. And so it created a timestamped and geolocated history using a 3-cent tag. It was just in the paperwork that was on the dash of a tractor trailer. So we knew exactly when it left, whose insurance it was on, who was responsible for what. It would initiate, like, for example, in this example, let's say that Best Buy was going to receive the load. Best Buy would get an automatic notification that says, hey, the load just left Fort Worth. It's going to be to your location in Fontana, California in 16 hours. And then they could make sure that the dock was ready to go. And they had the full bill of lading. So year over year, we did a 30-day pilot with them on that. In their first 30 days, they were averaging $5 million in chargeback returns and, just general problems of, hey, the wrong thing went to the wrong, the thing went to the wrong place or whatever. Year over year, and it was like, I think it was March or May, it was $5 million that year. The next year, it was $110,000. And they just went, we've got to roll this out organization wide. This essentially solved the problem. Wow. So just those 2 technologies just dropped. It wasn't that we just saved money on man hours, but we eliminated massive claims and returns on the other side too.
I love it. So let me back up a little bit, Caleb. I love getting in the heads of tech founders, highly curious people. So, you're based out of Texas. Is that where you're from?
No, originally from Utah, but kind of bounced around, have lived internationally, have worked on logistical things kind of all around the world. With the same technology right now, and it may not be relevant to the current podcast, and maybe, we're working with 8 ports of entry globally, all over East Africa, to streamline how they're moving cargo containers on ships, leveraging a lot of the same technology. So like Tanzania, Kenya, Madagascar, are asking us right now, hey, can you help us restructure the Port Authority? And maybe we'll get here in conversation. I don't know. But what they want to prove is, hey, we want clarity in our supply chain so we can prove to the world that we're open for business, that we're not involved in corruption, that we're not involved in human trafficking. One of the products that we're piloting right now, we designed it to look at produce in a tractor trailer to see, using infrared technology to see the heat signature. And we're using AI overlays to see, hey, based at this speed and this temperature, how long is this load going to fit within the parameters that, somebody like Walmart will receive it? Do I have to have expensive temperature sensors or can I just use infrared? So we're playing with that. One of the serendipitous things we found is you can see humans. They have a unique heat signature. Fentanyl has a unique heat signature. And so law enforcement and the military and a bunch of federal agencies have approached us and said, hey, if this works, could we participate with you guys? So we're piloting that technology right now in East Africa to say, hey, what if, I know we can't stop, evil in the heart of man, but we could cripple one of the supply chains where people move humans. When people move, people are trafficked. And so this was a serendipitous thing. We set out to go, hey, I want to look at a load of avocados and make sure that this integrates well with my TMS, and I'm communicating with corporate, and that the doc that's going to receive this at Kroger or Walmart or wherever is getting real-time data on this load of avocados. And serendipitously, we realized, hey, we might be able to contribute to the fight against human trafficking with the exact same technology. So there's a lot happening here as we're looking at the future of technology. How rapidly can we process this data with AI? What does that mean for corporate governance, corporate responsibility? Very, very rapidly, we're going to come into a place where companies are going to have to raise their hand, trucking companies, 3PLs, and even retailers, and say, hey, we're not the bad guys, and we can prove we're not the bad guys. And we're actually contributing to the solution, not participating in the problem. So,
and I think you're hitting on, I think this is so interesting. I'm going to come back to this serendipitous element of this, but you're hitting on, whether it's on purpose or not, the human trafficking is such an important issue for those within the trucking logistics community. And there's some tremendous efforts going industry wide to try to affect that. So I'm thrilled that this has about the possibilities of what you're creating here and what you're working with. But I am curious, what was it like once you realized that this technology had a capability and the ability to solve a problem that's very, that's very personal, that is a more human thing that, how do you respond to that once you become aware of that information? How does it affect the way that you think about your own business?
Yeah, there's a couple of things here. It's serious because we're talking about confronting evil. The selling of other humans is evil, period. We abolished slavery because it was evil. And slavery is still thriving around the world. Sex trafficking is still thriving around the world. And so I want to be very, very clear that this is sober. When we come in and we say, hey, we're trying to provide a quality, an excellent product and service at a competitive price. And then to discover that we can do that and combat evil is really heavy. It's led us into some awkward and difficult conversations. These are our friends, our neighbors, and I've got 4 daughters and 1 son. I have this horrible thought of what would happen if it was my child that was trafficked. What organizations would I want in place to provide aftercare? I'm not equipped. I do not have the skill set from counseling, spiritual, mental, emotional resources to help someone who's been equipped. So what we have to do is we've got to provide the financial resources for these organizations that will. So in our industry, I think we've got to take really honest and serious looks at what are we doing to help, and then what level of philanthropy or skilled charitable giving can we engage in to provide aftercare for victims, or otherwise we're making a lot of noise but not adding value. So thanks for letting me get on my soapbox.
Yes,
You sound passionate about this.
I love it when we can kind of combine some innovation with some heart. A lot of good things could happen from that. So where does that come from, Caleb? You're an interesting guy with that combination. Tell us about some of your influences growing up that kind of influenced how you think about the world and how you think about business.
Yeah, I'm the son of an entrepreneur, and he retired when I was 2, and he was just brilliant. And he had this uncanny knack for making money, and he made an awkward amount of money. And I remember asking him when I was young, I said, how do you do it? It was so simple, it didn't make sense to me until I was in my 40s. And he said, solve problems. And so what we do now, and even as I alluded to earlier, we didn't set out and say, hey, we want to build cool technology and we want to do neat things. It was, hey, as we look at this industry, what problems haven't been solved or what problems haven't been solved sufficiently. Some of the problems have been solved sufficiently, but not economically. So you stand back and you go, wow, that's great. I'll give you a real use case example. One of our major competitors had come into a warehouse in Arkansas. Gotta be careful what I say. Came into a warehouse in Arkansas and was said they
It's Caleb. So be careful.
There was a competitor who went into a warehouse somewhere, and they said, "Hey, we can provide the same level of service." And they came back, and their installation cost was $32 million. Then there was, because it would require drop power from the ceilings and some tenant improvements. And it was just this expensive solution. And what it would provide is real-time active inventory tracking in real time. And it was an amazing solution. $32 million CapEx to get it going. Then there was going to be about $2 million in maintenance and energy costs per year. We came in and we said, hey, that's an always on system. If you're willing to trade always on for on demand, meaning you got to push the button and move the unit, we can provide that to you for about $75,000 upfront and $18,000 a year for a software package. And so they went from a $32 million CapEx expense to a $75,000 CapEx expense. And they already had a golf cart that they put the unit on. And so they said, hey, our point of equilibrium is year like 46 with these two systems. And because of I said, actually, it's not, because by the time that hardware ages out and, you have your 3% growth, cost increased on your SaaS systems on average, those two lines never intersect. You get 5 years in, you don't replace it. You wait till 7 years till the hardware doesn't work anymore very well. You replace it again for another 30 million. There is no point of equilibrium where these two lines intersect. So it's not just, hey, how do you solve a problem, but how do you solve a problem in a way where people go, this is a no-brainer?
Right. I think it's so interesting, as you mentioned your, sage advice from your dad, and how much of, that is a part of our conversations when we're talking to tech-related companies across the supply chain. And we're talking about value creation. We're talking about a future exit. And really, that's what it comes down to. What problems are you solving, and what is the value created for your customers on the other side of that? And then to your point, how differentiated are you compared to what else is available? If the difference is not that significant between yourself and 10 other competitors, it's very hard to, have a compelling investment thesis around that. So I think it's really helpful for our audience to hear that spoken so plainly, because that's really how it works from an investment standpoint.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. As we look back on the evolution of technology, we used to buy laptops for thousands of dollars. And I've got teenage daughters and they're in school, and I'm not going to give them a MacBook because, a Coke is going to get spilled on it in the lunchroom. You can buy a Chromebook for $200 now. I mean, you can get a laptop for $200. So it's amazing as we look at so many of these things in our industry, and we're looking at pricing from 20 years ago still, where some of these companies have held a monopoly and they just print cash and they treat us customers with disdain and disrespect and go, you're going to pay top level prices for 20-year-old technology. It's going to be slow. You can't get a live person on the other end of the phone, and deal with it, because what is your other option? And we just looked at that as a market opportunity and said, what's the equivalent of a Chromebook here?
Yeah.
How do we get this $3,000 thing down to $200? And so we set out to do it. If I may, I've got a really clear example. I'll just show this for those of you watching it. What I'm holding up is I'm holding up a half screw, half drill bit with an RFID chip inside of it. And what this does is it goes into a wooden pallet. And, I'm manufacturing these for a couple of bucks. I'm selling them at a few cent, markup, because we're selling them in denominations of hundreds of millions at a time. I mean, we're negotiating an order for 660 million of these right now, because this will turn a wooden pallet into a smart pallet for a couple of bucks, as opposed to a smart pallet that's on the market that costs a few $100s.
Right.
And so you go, hey, with 5.2 billion wooden pallets in the global supply chain, if we were able to serialize those and then track them in real time for a couple of dollars, is that attractive? Well, these pallet pooling companies raise their hand. Transportation companies are raising their hand going, yeah, we want to know, timestamp and geolocate where we dropped loads so we can validate, hey, we didn't misload. We didn't misdeliver. We were on time and full. And so it's these little tiny things. They're not very sexy, but how do we create simple, cheap solutions that are no longer, hey, I'm sticking a $300 GPS unit on a pallet?
No, I love it. Such a good example. A couple more questions, sir. So fascinating what you've got working on. I'm so excited for you. Tell us about, in terms of profile. We talked about a couple of case studies, kind of $1 billion type publicly traded 3PLs. What would you want our audience to know about who else can benefit from some of the products that you are providing here? Size and shape, profiles, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's a terrific question. Our ideal customer profile was a small to medium business between 5 and 35 million a year. So because these large corporations, they can write a $35 million check, expense it, and it's no problem. What do you do with a small 18-person operation? They're doing, 15 million a year. They're never, ever going to install $1 million system. That's not going to happen. The margins aren't there. So what we set out in our original customer base were these small, 35,000 to 500,000 square foot warehouses where they go, hey, we're moving a lot of stuff. Tractor supply companies, people that move, specialized batteries, apparel companies, people that make, garden equipment, going, hey, I've got a lot of SKUs. I need to make sure that the loads go out on time. I need to make sure that when they get in the truck, the right thing's in the right truck headed to the right place. How can we get them a system that works? And so we've got solutions that are helping companies manage all their inventory in real time for under $100,000 a year, where, some of these we've got programs out there, $35,000 a year, where it's cheaper than a fully loaded employee, where they can validate what's in the warehouse, what's in the shop. Did it get on the right truck? Did it tie into my point of sale system? And so that was our sweet spot. We never intended to work with, Fortune anything companies. They called us. So I've got this huge affinity. And the reason why I do is it's the backbone of America. We've got millions of small businesses. Every small town USA, they're creating terrific products at great prices, and they're being edged out by these massive companies. As a capitalist, I go, cool. I don't hate the big companies either. Let's make sure that we create a level playing field to where somebody goes, hey, and this is a real use case for us. We make garden hoses and we're competing against all these major retailers. Can someone help us create a level playing field so we can sell more garden hoses? So we raised our hand. We said, we'd love to help you. 100,000 square feet. And we brought their cost of garden hoses down 2.21%. Well, when you're selling garden hoses, you're doing it on a tight margin. 2.21% was a massive shift for this little company to their EBITDA. Mm-hmm. And so it's stories like that where I go like, man, that is so cool, where we're leveraging technology to help real people make what sound like minuscule margins, but for them, that was massive. I mean, that was the difference of being able to, pay for their kids' college versus not.
No, that's great. That's a great. I'm so glad that you clarified that, because I think some folks, had you not made that clarification, may have gone in a different direction in terms of the potential application to their business. So I appreciate you doing that. So one last question, but before I ask that, for those that want to continue the conversation or want to learn more about the work that you're doing, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, Venatrust.com, Venatrust.com. And there is a form that you can click on, or you can contact me directly. It's C Brown, C as in Caleb Brown. So it's C Brown at Venatrust.com. And I would be so honored to chat with you guys. Hopefully, as you can tell, I don't twist arms. We don't manipulate people. I'd love to have a conversation with you. If it's not a fit, no pressure. I might be able to help you find a solution you're looking for. If we can serve you, I'll be unabashedly tell you we can do it. And love to hear from you guys.
Well, I love that. So one last, you're not off the hook yet here, Caleb. I got one last hot seat question for you, a little bit of a wild card. So you talked about the influence of wisdom from your father. And you and I both have sons and daughters. And I'm curious, I'm kind of at a season with my daughters where it's just really important to speak into their lives. And as you think about your daughters, what's some of the advice that you would give them as they think about being entrepreneurs or good human beings? I'm curious, what are some of the things that you're trying to speak into their life right now?
Well, yeah, you just touched on a major passion for me. And so if you grow up in the Brown household, you will start a business. And so my 15-year-old, my 13-year-old, and 10-year-old all have businesses. And it is absolutely awesome to watch them struggle, fail, try to find product market fit, run a balance sheet. What happens when you run out of money? One of them has a little candle company. She did well, 15 years old. She made $61,000 top line revenue last year as a teenager running a handmade candle company. Problem is she hired too many of her friends. So she comes to me and she says, I'm in trouble. And I said, you got to
teenagers, by the way. So,
right. So then you have a conversation. Do you let your teenage daughter go bankrupt, close up shop, or do you rescue her? I let her struggle. I let her ask the hard questions. I didn't bail her out. And, I don't want to get political, but I didn't bail her out. And I said, you have a hard decision to make. Do you not get paid? Do you lay people off? Or do you avoid the awkward tension of that and let your company die? And what she chose to do was to schedule a dinner hosted by the moms, sit her friend down, explain to her what happened, and said, I'm so sorry. I have to let you go. And she came back walking 10 feet tall. She was like, I can do this. I can win. And I got to tell you, Spencer, I couldn't have been more proud of her because she did it with humility. She did it with honor. She did it with care and compassion. But it's the reality. I mean, we've all had to lay people off. We've all had to make hard decisions. And so the 10-year-old, she's just started to make a profit. She made like $18. She's $18 in the black last quarter. And, she's going to school and she's doing this thing that she's all excited about. And she goes, hey, I want to hire one of my friends. And I said, and this was my single most proud entrepreneurial parent moment. As I said, I want you to go talk to your sister and ask her what her experience is with hiring friends. And I think you'd paid good money to hear that conversation. Don't do it. You're not ready. Don't. Then she goes the whole thing. She goes, when you have to fire him, it's the worst. She goes, I cried myself to sleep for 3 nights, which I hadn't heard. And my heart was so proud of her because she saw the person and she was like, man, this sucks. I don't want to have to fire my friends. So we are instilling those values. I hope we're not messing our kids up, but probably me, like every other, like millions of other Americans, are trying to teach their kids, the importance of creating value, taking care of people, providing more value than you take, being producers. And so, which I think is most of us in this industry we're producers.
I love it. Caleb, I love your entrepreneurial spirit. I love your heart. Thanks so much for spending spending some time with us in the hot seat. That's going to do it for us there. We will see you next time.